Yeah, we're good. Hello, everyone. So for Takhlees Business Services first webinar, right now it's very important that we know all the information that we need, all the methodologies that we need to understand, and at the same time, how we can apply this in the community and in the business. It's very important to have all our resources, but the most important resources that we should have right now is information. So we have our resource speakers and we have the founders of the Takhlees Business Services who will share with us what are the important information that we need right now. So let's call on our founders, Lorraine and Marwan Ali, for the introductions.
Good afternoon, everyone. As we quote His Highness Sheikh Mohammed bin Rashid Al Maktoum, today our goal is not just to protect people's health. Rather, our goal is to protect the economy, protect the gains, and protect a decent life. Good afternoon, live here in Dubai. Together with my co-founder, Mr. Marwan Ali, we are welcoming you to the first ever Takhlees Business Services Live, as we are being joined by highly respected and insightful resource speakers who will guide us through resiliency and recovery for the business and the community as a whole. Good afternoon, Marwan.
Good afternoon, Lorraine. It is very important, Lorraine, to ensure to maintain our health and safety. Not only that, but we need to work really for our future. We have to have a resilient business and economy which actually can adapt the change that we are going through now. It's very important for our communities and societies and our people to sustain their life. They gain a lot, but are we able now to keep it? Are we able to move forward? And the future is in our hands. So let's not lose whatever we earned before, and to learn how to cope and how to overcome this pandemic. I think the first opportunity that we are going to have over here, the way of thinking, the change of the lifestyle, the change of the way of thinking, and to get the different opportunities that we already are going to have. And Sheikh Mohammed said also that if you are going to expect the life before COVID-19, you are mistaken. So you have to prepare for the next era. It's going to have a lot of opportunities over there.
I think it all begins by accepting the fact that this is the new normal. And the normal that we used to know may not come back real soon. We don't have control over that. But what we have control over is what do we do next? How do we react to it? How do we accept? And how do we put it in our hands, as you mentioned, Marwan? So I think I'm really excited to know how, as individuals and the community, we can move forward with our first resource speaker. Right, Marwan?
Yes, exactly, Lorraine. If we are asking people about the state, what the component of the state? We are talking about the public sector and the private sector. But honestly, the core of the state is the community, is our people. So before we tackle the businesses, how they cope, how they are going to become agile and resilient, we are going to talk about people. We are going to talk about the human perspective, how they are going to cope with it. So what we can do, what the things that we can do to cope with it and to overcome this pandemic in terms of financially, mentally, and emotionally. So without a further ado, let us welcome Dean and Mrs. Dennis to talk about the resilience, about how the community can cope with this pandemic. Mr. Dennis, are you hearing us?
Hello, once again, thank you for the opportunity to have been invited for the first webinar of Takhlees Business Services. We have to remember that resilience is present in all the people, and we are grateful I'm speaking because I'm here in the UAE. We have been residing in Ajman for over a decade, and we are grateful enough because we have the government in the UAE who always think for the safety, for the benefit of its people. The people, the which is the main unit of the community and the country on its entirety. And thank you for giving me the opportunity. And for this, I will be speaking more of my experiences being an active leader in the community. And I will be sharing with you what are the characteristics in order for us to go through all the challenges that comes our way. We have to remember that the only permanent in this world is change. And for us to overcome and understand all of these situations and circumstances. But we have to remember that in any circumstance, in any experience that we are experiencing, whether it is personal, whether the experiences of our family, the experiences or what are happening in our community or in the entire country or in the entire world, what is really important is that we are getting the learnings from all of these experiences. And for that, I will be sharing with you the characteristics and the stages of the resilient community. Okay? One of the important characteristic of the resilient community is having the open mind for us to understand what is the cause of the problem. Because and the best way for us to understand is through listening. If we are going to make ourselves available, we have all the available resources, we have all the available technologies nowadays, we have all the social media platforms, and the resilient member of the community carry out all the strategies needed. And the second characteristic is for us to have the know-how on how to handle and for us to control our emotions, because resilient individuals in the community are able to manage their thoughts. Okay, we have to think that all the emotion comes from here. Whatever we think, we also feel. Then if we want to feel beautiful, if we want to feel something positive, then we have to think beautiful things. We have to think positive things. And of course, we can't deny the fact of the negative factors that are available in the environment and through which we have to be realistic. When we say we have to be realistic, we have to understand what is the real scenario that is really happening, and through which we can't deny the certain aspects of reality that are inevitable and present. Okay? And being realistic, but always hoping for the best. We have to remember that in every crisis, in every adversities, we can change that into an opportunity. What is really important is for us to have trust within ourselves. If we put trust within ourselves, that is another characteristic of becoming a resilient individual. Because if we have confidence, we are able to gain confidence and know our worth and competence, which is really important. We also have to be empathetic. We have to listen and understand the emotion of others. People with greater capacity to address the problems in the right way read the emotion of others, understand what is really happening around them, and act accordingly. Okay? Realistic community are able to motivate themselves. Not all people are equal. Yes, that's true. But some challenges motivate us, and others are opportunities for change. We have to know how to seek new ways of satisfaction from life, from all these experiences. And another thing is that we shouldn't be always asking why, because if we are always asking why, the tendency is to to blame others. What is really important is for us to ask how, on how are we going to contribute, or what we can be part of the change that is really needed, okay? And the difference between those with more resilient and those who are less, okay, is by really understanding these aspects on how the person is and how they put it into action. Okay, we have to understand another perspective, and understanding the problems will begin to appear less like a drama. Okay, what is really important, or the key, is our mindset, our will to change. And for me as a leader, I will be sharing with you some stages for us to focus on how to constantly have a resilient community. The stage one is engage and connect. With the availability of our technology, with the presence of the social media platform, we can utilize all these facilities. We have the Facebook, we have the Twitter, and all the other forms of social media. All we have to do is to get the proper information from the right and credible platform or source of information. Because if all the members of the society is made aware of the new approaches, of the cause, then together, if we involve together all the members of the community and seek their involvement, okay, and we are keeping the community pages in social media. We have the group chats for us to easily disseminate information through which we are understanding what is really happening. The second stage is understand the risk and resilience. In this stage, we need the analytic approach, which is really necessary to identify the indicators on which sections are really affected, directly affected. One of which is, of course, the economy, the livelihood. Is it the water and sanitation? Is it the shelter, the health, which is so vital? Of any disaster or occurrence, we have to identify what are the main threats, and analyzing the collective information enables us determine, okay, what should be done next. The third stage would be to develop the plan of action and put this plan of action into practice, and importantly, monitor the process at all time. And lastly, we have to learn from these experiences and evaluate the implementation of the plan of action so that we can consider all of these for the future plan of action as a reference. In other words, the stages will include to engage and connect, to understand, develop the plan of action, and learn from all of these experiences.
Thank you, Mr. Dennis, really, for this informative speech and key points that how the person can actually overcome this crisis and pandemic. And I like the fact that we need to take ourselves from the denial zone and stop asking the question of why and what if. And we go to the acceptance zone. We are going to ask ourselves how we can mitigate this problem and to put an action plan on how we are going to have a positive reaction towards things and to move forward. So if we are going to fall, at least we are going to fall forward, not backward. And really, this is the thing that we like from your speech. But realistically speaking, Mr. Dennis, how long it will take from a person to cope with this problem and to go from the stage of denial into the acceptance and to move forward. Usually, how long it takes?
Very good point, Mr. Marwan, and thank you for the appreciation of my short speech. Like what I mentioned earlier, the first introduction of my speech says that resilience is present in all the people. Everyone is resilient. We have all the ability. Each and every individual, I can cite an example. We all are like a sponge, right? The sponge. We have the ability to absorb, and at the same time, we have the ability to remove, and through which we are a sponge from our childhood, adulthood, and becoming mature from all those experiences. Okay, experiences in our school, in the community, experiences when we travel, all these learnings, we are like sponge. We are taking all the learnings, we are taking all the positive things. It's all up to us. Are we really absorbing or keep on exhausting all those positive things? It will be really on the individuality. But I believe on the goodness of the heart of each and every people, each and every member of the community. With all this happening in the entire world, this is not an isolated case. The pandemic is not an isolated case, which only happens in one region of the universe. It happens to all of the world. So with all this learning, for me, what is really good is that irregardless of the material things, what is really important is for us to get really the connection. We have to make use of our time, okay? Our time to share with our families and loved ones. And with all these experiences, let me share with you these. There are only two important things in this world. Of course, aside from our God. Number one for me is time. Time is priceless. Then we have to seize in each and every moment that we have. We have to live at its very best because tomorrow is never promised. Time is so priceless. Then it's all up to us. Where are we going to spend our time? Are we thinking only of ourselves? Perhaps not. I believe not. And we are perfectly created by God Almighty with two hands. One to help ourselves, including our family, and the other to help others. That for me is the real meaning of living in this world. The second most important for me that I really realized, I further realized with all this happening in this world is to value family and community. And what really is important is the impact you are leaving behind during your lifetime, irregardless of how many years you stayed in this world, whether you stayed 10, 20, irregardless of the figure. What is really important is that what you have done during your lifetime. So going back to the question, whether on how or how many time for one person to understand, I believe everyone nowadays, including our children's, including these generations, are now realizing the importance of life, and now they are realizing. I hope with my speech, with my participation, I am able to impart, to really realize, okay, and live the importance of time and devote this time to those whom we love and treasure the most.
Mr. Dennis, that was really wonderful. I just have one question because I too have gone through that. You know, I think I'm speaking from a personal point of view. Suddenly you have everything, and then just with a snap of your fingers, everything is gone. The world has stopped, and you just have to start believing in yourself again. It took me some time to be able to say, okay, yalla, let's go and let's do it again. Let's see where we're going to pick it up from. What do you advise people in terms of trusting in themselves? What do you think are the ways that we can realistically tell these people, start with small steps? What are those things to make us believe in ourselves again?
You know what, Lorraine? I have mentioned during our introduction. The other day, I was in a meeting with the ambassador to the Philippine ambassador to the UAE, and I strongly believe I wanted to quote this statement coming from the Philippine ambassador to the UAE, and I would like to speak as per my understanding. Okay, being a Filipino, the Filipino expats, we we have a high trust and confidence, and we are so resilient. This is my statement in Filipino language. Tayong mga OFW, ang taas ng tiwala natin sa mga sarili natin. I believe walang magugutom na OFW because we will live that principle of bayanihan. Walang magugutom na Pilipino. Tayong lahat ay magtutulungan. Kilala tayo sa buong mundo, pagiging masipag, totoong may mataas na integridad at talagang tunay na nananalaytay sa dugo natin, no, ang bayanihan. I hope I answered your question, Ms. Lorraine.
You know, that is really exactly how I'm feeling as well. Matamaan man tayo ng bagyo, kidlat, whatever it is, at all times, they even say we're the happiest people on earth because kahit may bagyo na dyan, kumakaway pa rin tayo sa camera because we are that resilient. We embrace challenges. We embrace a lot of difficulties in our lives, and we make it our own, even if it's not our own during those times. But now we too are facing that as our own. And I really firmly believe, and I'm one with you in saying, kaya natin to. We have to start saying, kaya natin to. And only by saying that, we end up believing, and maybe tomorrow take a step or two and move forward. Or maybe now, you never know.
Right.
Thank you so much, Mr. Dennis. That was really, really insightful. Much appreciated. Marwan?
My pleasure.
Yeah, thank you, Dean Dennis. Dean Dennis is really an epitome of community service especially in the Ajman community. So we'll share his video shortly.
Hello everyone, my name is Dennis Alejandria, a proud Bicolano from Concepcion Grande, Naga City. I am working here in the UAE for over 10 years. Ngayon, kasama ko na po ang aking family. I have my wife Pearly, my son Dan Benedict, and my daughter Natasha Nicole. I am presently working in an oil and gas company as a contracts administrator. Also, I am serving my community as the Dean of the Filipino Institute Ajman. I am also the founding president of Field Club Ajman, and I am proud to be an expat. We have to do our very best kasi hindi natin alam what's tomorrow. Hindi natin alam kung anong meron ang bukas, kung ano pa ang plano sa atin ng may likha. So, para sa akin, ang purpose ng buhay, kaya tayo binigyan ng dalawang kamay. Isa para magtulong sa sarili at ang isa para magtulong sa kapwa.
Thank you, Mr. Dennis, for this informative speech. I learned personally 2 points out of it. You are not going through this problem by yourself. There are a lot of people sharing the same problem. So if we stick together and if we work together hand by hand, we can overcome this problem in a very fast way. This is the first thing that I learned from you. And the second thing, actually, that everyone has the capability, but sometimes seem that we forget that we do have that capability. So if we remind ourselves that we are able to overcome this problem, and we do have the power, and we do have what it takes to overcome this problem, we can do it. Time is not an element that you are going to say, no, maybe I need 2 months, 3 months, 4 months. You can do it now, or it's your choice to do it after 10 years. It's up to you. Thank you very much, Mr. Dennis. And Lorraine, the floor is yours now.
Thank you.
Thank you so much, Mr. Dennis. Thank you, Marwan. Now we have discussed about people. We talked about how as humans, as an individual, and together with the community, we can overcome these things. Now let's move on to discuss how would businesses thrive. One of the biggest industries that was hit by this pandemic is not just the health industry. That also includes the business, the economy in general. That is why today we have a resource speaker who is an expert in her field. She has provided advisory work in finance transformation engagement, specializing in global business services and service delivery management for multinational companies. She has a vast area of experience in handling multiple cross-border engagements, providing leadership to local and international teams. She has been in the field of different sectors, primarily in consumer industries, logistics, real estate, and even the healthcare. A product of University of Santo Tomas, a certified public accountant, and a certified information systems auditor. Our speaker also completed the Management Acceleration Program of INSEAD Singapore and Harvard Leadership Program by Harvard Business School. She works as a partner for SGV & Co., specializing on performance improvement. Live from the Philippines, let us all welcome Miss Katrina K. Macaisa. Welcome, Miss K, rather.
Hi, good afternoon, everyone. Thank you so much for inviting me to speak in your first ever Takhlees webinar. I'm really honored and very much pleased to be part of this program. Honestly, coming after Dean Dennis could be a big problem for me because he did a really good job of speaking about how people could be resilient, how communities can be more resilient. And I know this is not within my topic, but I just really admire and I will keep, and I learned a lot from his talk. I took notes earlier I'm gonna make sure that I put them into practice. So I feel like I'm coming at a disadvantage now after that excellent topic. But again, thank you so much for inviting me. I'm 1,000 miles away from everyone, but thank you to technology. I'm able to participate and share some of our insights. And this is something that we are doing currently here in the Philippines. We're working with a lot of associations, a lot of companies to more or less share what we think would be useful and helpful for them as they navigate the new normal. So Miss Lorraine mentioned this earlier. It's now probably the time for us to accept the new normal. The things that we know before are not going to be the same anymore. And like in a blink of an eye, with the snap of a finger, everything has changed. So this is our way of helping the community that we belong to, that we belong in. And mainly, actually, we roll this out globally. We share this learning across the world where EY has an office. And we hope that in this small way, we are able to stimulate some insights from your end and also give you hope in terms of how to more or less overcome what we are all currently facing. So much has already been said, written, and discussed about COVID-19. I feel like it's going to be the theme of the year. And every time I turn on the TV and listen to the news, everything almost always evolves around COVID-19. And on top of this, we see that this particular pandemic has really added another layer of challenge, or I would say a layer of disruption to the current businesses and the different sectors that we have at the moment. So if you look at it, some of the key sectors that would be negatively impacted will definitely be the airline companies or the airline sector, tourism and hospitality, oil and gas is also impacted in a way. And all of these sectors that sustain and more or less support our economy is really causing a lot of strain, not only in the government or in the public, but also within the private sector. And I did an early research a while ago, and I saw that I think for UAE, it's expected that there's going to be a 3.5% contraction of the economy. And while this will happen this year, there is a very positive outlook that after this year, hopefully by 2021, we will be able to rebound by 3.3%. So seeing that view, seeing that perspective in a way should give us hope that there is something that is still positive to come after all of this pandemic. I mentioned earlier that COVID-19 is more or less just another layer of disruption in the businesses. So what I'm sharing now on the screen are some of the trends that we are seeing at the moment that we think will eventually impact what the new normal will be. So we see these main 9 forces or trends that will shape the new businesses, the new economy that we will face after this. And I'll just probably highlight a few items that might be relevant for UAE at the moment. I'll start first with virtualization of customer interaction. So that's number one, and linking that with number eight, which is digitalization is picking up speed. At the moment, we see that most of us are probably increasing our online shopping, online interactions, because that's the only way that we can connect. That's the only way that we can collaborate. That's the only way that we can run our business even. I think, honestly, from my end, we are part of an organization that has really thought about digitalization. And even though we've been on lockdown since I think March 15, if I'm not mistaken, and it's expected to go for another 15 days, we're still able to continue to interact with our clients who are our main customers, mainly because we already have the infrastructure. But more and more, we see the smaller businesses are trying to adapt into this. It's good as well that the technology nowadays are not as costly as before. We can now access Zoom for a minimal amount, or we can even get it for free, but for a limited time only. But we see that all of these forces, all of these trends are more or less shaping a different future ahead of us. The second item I want to highlight is reputation and trust. So locally here in the Philippines, at least, we see a lot of private companies that have really pitched in with the government to help the country, to help their fellow men, to help the hospitals get through the pandemic. And I would actually commend Takhlees for doing this, because this is part also of building your reputation and trust in the society that you operate in. And I think you do this not because you want to be known as that, but because you feel like it is your social responsibility to be of value, to bring hope, and to help our fellow community or our fellows in the community that we operate in. Because if they succeed, then we also succeed with them. Third and fourth would more or less be something that I want to tackle together. Third is on the sharing resources and fluid workforce. So we see trends currently wherein some companies, especially the smaller ones, are trying to join their forces and trying to look at areas where they could create some economies of scale. So that in a way, they're able to operate together, retain the competition between them, but at the same time, they're able to manage the costs. So this is something that will help in your liquidity. It will help in your financial stability. And more or less in the small and medium enterprises, this is what we are seeing as a current trend. On the fluid workforce part, of course, allowing the work from home arrangements, gig economy, and maybe a recalibrated workforce arrangement is something that companies are looking into because of sharing all of these resources. 6 and 7, I will tackle together. I think it came across a surprise even to the biggest companies when all of a sudden they were informed that some of the trades that they have with other countries are going to be limited or in a way restricted. Because of the border lockdown, a lot of companies are now revisiting their supply chain. Some of their components might be produced in another country or even in another region, and it's very difficult to get those goods across, mainly because of the lockdown. And we think that because of this, companies are now starting to rethink their supply chain strategy. Should I do it regionally, or should I be able to come up with a tiering of different suppliers so that at any time I could have access to my raw materials, or I could even have access to the inventory that I should be placing on shelf or on the shelves or on the locations or on the stores that we are operating in. Fifth is more or less on the onshoring of functions and assets. So this might be very specific to Philippines, but in the Philippines, we're quite known for a country where they put up their shared services mainly because of the labor arbitrage. But eventually, I think it's because of the people as well that are really all out in supporting the business and going the extra mile to make sure that they deliver. But because of this, there are certain limitations that have been brought about by COVID, wherein some people who work in these organizations are not able to come to the office. And now the onshore companies are thinking about taking back those jobs onshore so that they are able to control how certain functions are run or how certain functions are currently executed outside of the country they operate in. And then lastly, regulators are becoming more flexible. I saw on the news as well that I think for UAE, there are a lot of fiscal stimulus that the government is going to implement, and mainly to make sure that we sustain the businesses, the small, medium, and the large businesses that we have there, and to protect the economy and the workforce. So I think more and more governments are thinking about what can they do to support the economy, to support the workforce, to support the businesses that contributes to a better nation building. So the government is now really mandated to look after that and not just about generating the right amount of taxes. Well, at least in the Philippines, that's a problem. But at least generating the right amount of taxes to support all of the government projects and policies. So this particular cross-sector trends combined with the pandemic is now creating a test of your company's resilience. And we think that for you to be able to navigate all of these moving parts, all of these challenges, as you have said, as you have mentioned earlier, it's really opportunities. It's about us looking at this with a structured approach. And in our discussions with some clients, the main challenge normally is that a finance person would mainly think about financial stability, but an operations person will think about sustaining their workforce and also sustaining their manufacturing operations, if any. So it depends on who you talk to. They would have a different perspective of what should be taken care of first. They have a different perspective as to what is critical. They have a different perspective of what the company should focus more on. And we think that if we just look at it from that perspective, it would more or less become a siloed approach, and it might not be as effective as we want it to be. And with that thought in mind, within EY, we realized that we can help out the businesses by creating this framework that I'm now sharing on the screen, and we call this the Enterprise Resiliency Framework. So we've just put in here COVID-19 because we think this is the most imminent factor that is really shaping how businesses are operating. But we really think it's an enterprise resiliency framework that you can use regularly to more or less revisit how you are, how resilient you are as a business, and what are the key factors that you need to consider. So this framework actually shows two main aspects. The first one are the areas of focus, and these are the ones in the gray circles. I like the topic earlier wherein it focused about people, it focused on communities, it focused on creating a sustainable and resilient community. And for us, we really think that this is maybe the first two items that we need to think about in our businesses. Are we taking care of our employee health and well-being? And are we also looking at our talent and workforce and ensuring that they are able to help the business get to the next level? We have a perspective wherein we think our people are our key assets. Without them, we will not be able to meet our objectives. We're not going to be able to meet our vision, our goals, and our target. So it's critical that we put people at the center of all of this crisis that we are looking into and we are facing. After that, we think the other areas such as customer safety and brand protection, financial and investor, risk, government and public policy, technology and information security, insurance and financial recovery, and lastly, supply chain and global trade are some of the areas that you might look into secondarily. So first, put people first and at the center of everything you do, and then make sure that you sweep across these other areas to make sure that you are balancing the needs of your businesses and you identify which ones need more focus at a given point in time. So, for example, if we talk about your employee health and well-being and talent and workforce, it talks about how are we preparing our offices, our businesses when we resume the work. So are we putting in new processes, new policies to make sure that we are protecting their health and safety? Are we implementing the right sanitation practices as mandated by the World Health Organization to make sure that we are not also at risk of contracting or transmitting the virus within our offices or our premises? For talent and workforce, it's talking about how do we make sure that our people are taken care of? Are we able to listen to them? Are we able to check on them if they are still okay? I think, well, you mentioned earlier about the OFWs. I'll be honest with you, I'm a daughter of an OFW. So it resonated well with me when you said that the OFWs are strong, resilient, and they will do anything and everything they can to survive, and on the spirit of community. And I think in our own businesses, we should also consider or use that culture or put that culture into good use to make sure that we are sustaining our people. For customer safety and brand protection, it's about engagement. Nowadays, engagement is the name of the game. So if you're able to be upfront and center and in front of your customers, then you more or less would win in the market. So it's about continuous engagement. It's about ensuring that we protect their safety as well. And we're able to bring the products or bring the services where they need it and when they need it. Of course, considering some of the restrictions that are in place because of COVID. Next is financial and investor and risk. I'll put this together because in a way, the way we look at it is that it should be working or tied up together. So for financial and investor, it's about looking at your company's liquidity. So during these times, cash is king. So it's important that you are able to forecast and you plan as to your cash disbursements and cash collections in making sure that we have enough cash in our pockets to run the business and for any other incidentals or emergencies. I've put it in connection with risk because for risk part, we need to be able to come up with different scenarios. So for one of our clients, we've helped them come up with 3 particular scenarios. So what will happen to them and what would be their next steps if they continue to be closed for 6 months, for 3 months, and then if they're able to operate within 9 months. So we came up with that scenario planning so that whatever happens, they are able to anticipate and more or less address what they should do after that or immediately plan for a particular issue or crisis that might hit them in the future. Government and public policy is also hugely important, especially now that the government is really taking out all the stops and making sure that they support the businesses. So it's important that you look at any government or fiscal stimulus that will be helpful for the business. Technology and information security is about, I mentioned earlier about digitalization. And sometimes companies in need to respond to what is happening, they would just implement a technology or an application or a software without really looking at perhaps the cybersecurity and cyber resilience aspect. Remember, it is important that we protect our assets, not just the physical or monetary assets, but also our data assets. They said, yeah, that data is now the second most important resource in the world next to oil. So just imagine how important that is. And other than making sure we're able to capture all data points in the business, we're also able to protect the cybersecurity aspect of our business. For insurance and financial recovery, this is just looking into contracts, looking into any insurance policies, wherein there could be a provision for compensation for any force majeure or acts of God instances. I think for some insurance contracts, they qualify COVID as something that is not really under that particular provision. But I think for some contracts or some insurance companies are actually honoring that. So it's now time to look into our insurance policies and all of our contracts to see if we have exposures or if there's a way for us to actually claim from any of the insurance contracts. And then lastly, supply chain and global trade is just looking at the end-to-end supply chain that you have from the point that you plan for your business until you more or less deliver those products or services to your customers or to your clients. That has to be mapped, and you have to identify if there are any exposures or if there are any challenges that will impact your business continuity. So a lot has been said about this, and that's maybe the first part of the framework. To help you further, we have an Excel file which you can take through later on as to remind you and more or less make you think about what are the things that you should be thinking on around these 9 areas. So I'll share that in a while, but I'll tackle first the second aspect or the second main area of this framework, which is the time horizons. So the time horizons or the three horizons that we are talking about here is now, that's the first one. Second is next. Third is beyond. So we definitely understand that businesses at the moment are really focusing on business continuity. Because of what's happening, we are forced with a crisis so huge that we need to more or less anticipate and plan how do we sustain the next 1 or 2 months of our business. And while that is expected, we would suggest to companies or to leaders to not just think about the now, but have another eye on the next and beyond. So when we talk about now, it's about, again, continuity, it's about crisis planning, it's about looking at your existing business and trying to maximize your profitability, trying to maximize your revenue, and respond to any particular challenges that might impact or might hamper the continuity of your business. So when we say now, this is more or less the first 3 months of the crisis. Where are you now and how are you responding to this particular threats or risks to your business? The next time frame, which is next, and we normally put this in a time frame of 3 to 6 months, this is where you now start planning for the future. Now is particularly difficult, and I would say there's a lot of things going on. But once that settles, and more or less a certain level of normalcy that comes into your business, now that is now the time to plan for the future. And it's all about building a resilient enterprise. So you look at medium term challenges around maybe your workforce, around your supply chain, around your financial stability, and also look at how your other competitors are managing through the crisis. And that's looking around the sector that you belong to. And try to see, out of what is happening, what can you do to be more resilient? And in a way, be ahead of everybody else in your sector. And then lastly, the last time frame that I'm going to talk about is beyond. And typically, this would likely be around 9 to 12 months into the future. I mentioned earlier about the cross-sector trends, and we think that these trends will shape the new normal. We think that these trends will eventually shape a different future, a different normal, a different view of how we're going to measure ourselves against competitors, a different way of how we're going to look at our value proposition to our customers or to our clients. And we think that understanding all of these changes, or understanding the opportunities that are ahead of you because of these trends, can help you take the steps now and more or less plan now as to what will happen in your future. And that kind of thinking and planning or strategizing is more or less what we call duality of strategy. Having an eye on the now, maximizing the profits, maximizing the opportunities, but making sure that we're also anticipating what's going to happen in the future and making steps to make sure that when we get to the future that we are envisioning now, we are able to operate, we are still relevant, we are even leading in the particular sectors or industries that we are part of. Again, the new normal might be scary. We don't know what's going to happen. There's still a lot of uncertainty. But we think that if we're able to more or less predict and even shape the future that we want, then we will be able to adapt accordingly and plan accordingly. So the last page that I will share now is the more or less some of the initial steps rather that you would want to take while you're in the now, next, and beyond. So for now, as I mentioned earlier, it's safeguarding business continuity. And this is where we are in a state of shock and we are just planning to restart our businesses. Notice here that again, we talked about putting people at the center, making sure that we are supportive of them, we are taking care of their health and safety. But other than that, we need to also think about the financial stability of our business. After all, diba? It's a business that we are looking after, and the financials are very important. Liquidity is going to be a critical factor for sustainability in the now. and then of course continue operations. For next, while we see that the crisis will still continue, we think that companies will be able to recover or at least plan for recovery. And this is where you now adapt the other areas of your business. So we're talking about your operations already. So fixing your supply chain, fixing your customer interactions or access, looking at your cost structure. What are the fixed costs? Is there a way for us to reduce them? What are our variable costs? Can we also manage that better? And then eventually have a plan as to how you will maximize the profits and minimize the costs that the business is incurring because of what is happening. Definitely, everybody is going to be hit. Honestly, I don't think that there's a sector that will not be impacted by what is happening at the moment, even healthcare. And we thought that healthcare will more or less be benefiting from this. But to be honest, healthcare at the moment is really suffering with all of that with all of the cases, with all of the demand. It's not even sustainable for them at the moment. So everybody is impacted. And part of what we ask businesses to do is to plan for next. Can we ignite recovery by changing how we do things and build a resilient and stronger enterprise? Learn from what we learned, learn from what happened in the now and adapt for the next and beyond. And then lastly, for beyond, it's about long-term value creation. And when we say long-term value, it should be a value that is not just monetary in nature, but it's also that it's a value that ripples across the economies, across the society, across the countries that we belong to. So it's not just about what I get, but also what do I give to the community that I am part of. So looking at new growth opportunities, reimagining relationships with your customers and suppliers. Maybe this one, looking at virtual working. I think this is going to be the trend for the next 2 to 3 years. Can we make working from home work? Because at least for now, that's the only way that we can actually be productive or work. Reinvent business solutions. What they say is that when there's a challenge, there's always an opportunity that anyone can actually explore and leverage on and maximize. So let's have an eye on what this means for us in terms of an opportunity versus a challenge. Don't ask why, ask how. How can I make this work for me? And how can I benefit from this? But at the same time, help the community benefit from it as well. So those are just some of the key aspects on the now, next, and beyond that you might want to think about. I promised sharing with you this particular tool. So this is the Enterprise Preparedness tool, and it's an Excel-based file. We have an online tool as well, but for purposes of discussion, I will use the Excel file. But basically, it tackles the 9 areas of focus that I mentioned earlier. And what I would ask you to do in your own businesses is to try to look at the different questions that you might want to consider in this particular areas. So are we putting in the right programs for our people? Are we implementing changes in the process and policies that will look after our people and our teams, etc.? So there are different questions here that could give you an indicator of how prepared and how resilient you are as an enterprise. So you basically answer it with a yes or no, or if it is not applicable to you, just put in not applicable, and it will calculate a preparedness score. So please forgive me because I am an accountant and I love my numbers. So it's almost always important to me that there's a certain quantitative measure. So that is just an aspect of this tool. But the other aspect is really on the qualitative discussions that you would have with your counterparts or with your team in your organizations. This is the time for us to bring everyone together and rally around bringing the business to resiliency. So after you answer all of these, you will get like an overall preparedness score, and it will highlight which areas do you need to focus on immediately. So anything that is below or 50% and below will give you a red score. 51% until I think 75% will be a yellow score. And then of course, 75 and above would be green score. So it will give you an idea of how resilient you are at a certain point in time. So this will be useful for you as a tool because you can look into this every month or every time there is a change in all of the aspects, in some of the aspects here rather. And more or less, it will give you an idea of what are the areas of focus that you need to look into immediately in the short run and maybe in the long term. And use this as a tool regularly. It's not just a one-time exercise, but this is going to be a tool that you can use across several iterations, depending on how frequently you would want to assess your resiliency, and also in a way to track the programs that you have to address your company's resiliency. So having said that, I'm now at the close of my session. I really think and we believe that building and strengthening enterprise resilience has to be supported by a structured and comprehensive approach and making sure that we look at our business holistically. And while the imperative now is to survive through business continuity, we need to look for what is going to be the next step. And the next step is definitely to thrive and transform. As leaders, may it be in your business, in your communities, or in whatever area that you serve, you are tasked, and I think you are also empowered to take the responsibility and lead your organization to be better prepared for what is next and beyond. Would you rather be a passive audience to everything that is unfolding, or would you want to shape the future that you want, not only for yourself, but for the business, for the community, and for the economy that you belong to? And with that, that's the end of my session. I know that's a bit long. It may be boring at some points, but I do hope you learned something from my session. Again, thank you very much for inviting me here. I really appreciate it.
Miss Kay, thank you very much. It has been really something that I learned a lot. To be honest with you, I'm scribbling a lot as you were talking. I'm not just happy with the presentation, although I have a copy of it. I was like scribbling everything. I totally agree with you when you say that now it's just about thriving and continuing. It's just that at this moment. And honestly, that is what we are going through. In the business, it's very hard to put your foot 5 steps forward. First, let's take it and accept the new now. Let's accept the now and let's see and make sure that everyone is being safe and everyone, and us included, is going to be able to hand in hand take a step forward. It's just about accepting and thriving at this very moment. And honestly, the Excel file that you shared, I assure you, it's something that I'm going to have to look into. And that is a very constructive way of assessing ourselves, having the numbers really bespeak of what we can do next, and to know and to re-examine from us, are we really there? Are we really prepared? Are we really doing the right steps? Are we in the right track? But then again, really, honestly, now is something that you have opened our minds to how to take it in the first 3 months, in the next 3 to 6 months, and the 9 months and beyond. You might be right that maybe we have to start accepting that it's not going to end real soon. And having a structured plan to move forward will definitely help us. I really don't have questions. I feel like I'm just reiterating everything that you're saying because of my scribbling. And as I quote you and Mr. Dennis, we don't ask the why. We just ask the how right now. And that is what matters personally, as a community, and as a business in general. Marwan, do you have anything?
Thank you very much for this informative session. I do have two questions for you. The first
Yes.
question, you talked about sharing resources. So are we going to see a growth of the outsourcing services, since most of the companies right now are on the business continuity stage? So they are really rearranging the inner house. They are seeing what is the most important services that we have to keep, what the most important, let's say, operation that we need to keep, and what the other things that we need to let go. And if they want to continue their services, they have to outsource it. So do you see in the near future or now a growth in the outsourced services?
Yeah, I think there will be a likely growth in the outsourcing services. I think for some time, especially when the pandemic started or when it was announced by World Health Organization, wherein we think everybody just stopped and they had to more or less look into, okay, what is happening in my business and what are the areas of where are the areas that I could probably cut my costs or can I have more efficiencies in. And to be honest with you, we're seeing a lot of requests at the moment where can we help other companies streamline their operations or centralize it in a certain location. And it could be in-house, it could be with a third-party service provider, but we definitely see a lot of that happening. I think the first to go really are the back office services. So finance and accounting, IT, in some aspects, even HR is also being outsourced. And we see that to continue in the next few months. And we think that will really happen, I think, significantly now that people are looking into cutting costs and just more or less focusing off where they are really generating value. I know of a company wherein they think that their IT function is not their core competency. So they think that it will be better served by someone who really knows IT. So if they are, let's say, in a banking industry, IT is not really something that is core to my business. So maybe I just have someone manage some IT aspects of the business, and I have a governance framework to make sure that the IT companies are complying with our securities, with our standards, and with our SLA. So definitely that is going to be a trend in the coming months and even in the coming years. I also think that other than the back office services, you would see middle office services such as analytics, analysis, automation coming into play as well. And then I think even front office functions might eventually be outsourced. But I think that would be more or less a bit risky because that's more or less bordering on your customer engagement, interactions with their customers, and sometimes organizations are more or less protecting that particular aspect of their business. So yeah, definitely that's a very long answer to your question, but more or less that's what we're seeing in the coming months.
Thank you very much for this answer. The second question that I do have now, you mentioned that most of the companies now, they have really to focus on their liquidity and the cash. So you mentioned something about the investing, the investor, and how you are going to have your receivable cash from different companies that they are owing you. Now, what's going to be your recommendation for those companies? Uh, I mean, in terms of liquidation, in terms of sustaining themselves, in terms to have an extra fund to sustain themselves, where they're gonna have the balance between maintaining the company and maintaining the people also as well. As we mentioned, the core of the society and the core of the state are people. So if the people went or go jobless, a lot of businesses they are going to lose their reputation, their trust, as you mentioned over there. So how to balance between those two? So the things over here first, the liquidation and how to get the cash. Second of all, how to keep the balance between the business continuity and the continuity of the people and their job.
Man, you've asked a difficult and I think it's a very timely question as well. So first off, on the liquidity aspect, so this is a huge area of focus at the moment for most companies. And most companies are now reviewing their contracts, both with their customers and suppliers. We understand, of course, that our customer is also a supplier of someone else's business, and they might not be able to collect as well. So I mean, it's like a chain. We just live in a value chain, and more or less, if someone is impacted, everybody else in the value chain gets impacted as well. So that is really a challenging aspect, and there's a lot of negotiation that has to go with it. Honestly, we've seen other companies either sell some of their receivables, although that's very risky because you get to absorb a lot of loss on that. The second will be looking at your current assets and seeing how you can probably more or less liquidate some of them, although it's very difficult to really find a buyer given the economic given the economic implication of the pandemic. But we see some companies going to as far as that. Others are also looking at other revenue generating opportunities or cash generating opportunities so that they could collect immediately. Honestly, there's no straightforward answer to it that can apply across all sectors, but I think it will really depend on how well you're able to negotiate with your customers, especially on those receivables. And if you're not more or less managing the receivables, it's about generating revenue. So looking at other revenue generating areas within your business and maybe looking at a different go-to-market approach so that you're able to liquidate, let's say, your inventory or maybe the services that you are offering, shaping it in a way that it is relevant to the current market conditions and to the current market demands. The second aspect is on the disbursements. So currently, at least as far as I know, here in the Philippines, there are a lot of government support in terms of at some point they're asking the banks to waive or to not collect the loans that will fall due on a monthly basis, just so that businesses are still able to hold on to the cash that they have. So looking at any government support or fiscal policy that will support the liquidity of the business, so that is key. The second is negotiating with your vendors. So it's about having a different way of managing your contracts or negotiating the terms of your contracts rather. And typically, you can do that with your strategic partners or with your strategic vendors, wherein you've already established a high level of trust. And more or less, these vendors are really willing to help you out or extend a certain level of credit or maybe a certain time or prolong a certain period of time for you to pay off your debts or for you to pay off any of the inventory or services that you owe them. So it's looking into that. It's really looking at what comes in and what comes out, and then managing more or less how the money funnels out of the business. So it's not an easy task. I'll be honest with you, and it would require you to sweep your whole organization to look at areas where you can maximize your cash. So that's the first one. The second is on the managing the workforce or labor requirement. So um, I think we sometimes need to face the fact that there will definitely be difficult decisions that businesses would have to look into, and there will definitely be a time wherein maybe businesses are forced to lay off people or maybe to part ways with some of their employees, and I think that is inevitable. Um, I think it's about managing that with a high level of sensitivity and also at the same time looking at the different workforce options that you can offer them. So particularly here in the Philippines, we have opportunities, or some companies are looking at opportunities wherein they ask their employees to maybe just work 3 days in a week or 4 days in a week, so that more or less they still get to earn, but maybe not as big as what they are earning before. So they're just paid maybe 4/5 of their salary or a quarter of their salary, but they get to commit, or they say to their employees that after this, once we are able to stabilize our operations, then we will go back to normal and we will give back what we have more or less owed you at a certain point in time. So those are some of the, I'd say, options that other companies are now looking into and implementing. Others are thinking about maybe using their vacation leaves or some of their benefits and offering assistance in some aspects, like getting a loan from the social security system or from the government via the employer. So those are some of the things that employers can possibly do, at least in the short run. But I honestly think it's going to be a very difficult decision. I don't think that it's not going to happen, because I think and I see that it's happening across all sectors, that there's a huge and massive layoff coming up. Here in the Philippines, I think around 3 million people have lost their jobs in the past 2 months. So I mean, it's inevitable. So there are things wherein these are things that are sometimes out of control of the certain businesses. But I think managing it with a high level of sensitivity and making sure that you are more or less still thinking about them and being honest and transparent with them as you negotiate with them the workforce dynamics that you would have, then I think that's the best way that you can handle this particular situation. So I know it's a very long answer. It's a difficult question. You give me a very difficult question to answer, but that's what we see currently, and that's what we see. That is something that's really gonna happen, whether we like it or not. I think that's part of the pandemic, of the effect of the pandemic, not just on the health aspect, but also on the economy and the business. I'm gonna shut up.
No, that was really, really insightful. To be honest with you, this is the hard truth that most businessmen and entrepreneurs are facing right now. We have to accept the fact that at some point maybe you need to let go some of your people if you really anymore cannot reconcile the fact that of maintaining them or trying to work around a different working schedule, or maybe you already have exhausted their paid leaves
Yeah.
and you have already exhausted all probable measures, but the liquidity just does not stand through to maintain them. It's a hard truth to face. It's a very difficult decision to make. It's not something, I think some of the employees also have to understand that from a perspective of an employer, it is not a quick win decision. If you can, as much as you can, you try to keep them. As much as you can squeeze it and try to keep everyone benefiting despite the pandemic, we try our very best. But the hard truth remains. And I think the way that you have articulated it, yeah, just struck it through again, that at some point, if we really do not recover, we might have to. I'm speaking in behalf of employers out there, and hopefully that employees would understand that it's just a matter of a byproduct of the current scenario. It has nothing to do with them being useful or not useful to the company. The
Yeah,
company
yeah,
just could not
exactly.
sustain anymore. Yes.
Yeah, sorry, just one more point. And I
Yes.
think the heart of an entrepreneur is really, I mean, it's strong. And I think that employers are not just going to give up. I'm pretty sure that all employers will just do everything and rally on and do whatever it takes for them to keep everyone together and to sustain the business. So I'm pretty sure when we're at that point, it's because we are between a hard place and a rock and a hard place, and we have no other option but to really look into maybe letting go of some people. And one last point, I think we saw one company wherein they said that once this is over and we're able to recover, you will be top on our list in terms of people that we will hire back. So it's like it's going to be just for a period of time, but once we're able to recover, and if you're still available, then we'll definitely bring you back into the company again. So again, high level of sensitivity, empathy in the process, and making sure that we are being honest and transparent with them and factual as well. So I think those are some of the key things that you can do as an employer.
Thank you. Thank you so much for that, Ms. Kay. It's a hard truth placed in a very honest way that we are all facing right now. Marwan, your thoughts?
Thank you very much. I think we've been talking about resilience and agility a lot. And honestly, if we are going to see it from the institutional perspective and personal perspective, I think they are similar. They are similar to each other. So Mr. Dennis tackles actually the personal aspect of resilience and how you are going to be resilient as an individual. And we've talked about, and Kay talked about the institutional perspective. So really, if we are going to work together on those two perspectives, really this is what we are going to happen in the community, where actually we are going to overcome the problem and we are going to move forward. We can't work separately over here. The private sector can't work without talents, can't work without a workforce, without people who are really let's say guarding their brands and guarding their reputation, and to give their efforts and their heart to the company. At the same time, the company can't actually, the individual can't sustain themselves without the existing of those. So the existing of both of them are very important. I think when it comes to the public policy, really the government should look into those matters and how to sustain individuals and businesses at the same time. So we are going to have that balance. Thank you very much. I really appreciate you, Mr. Dennis, and that's okay. I really appreciate your talk. We learned a lot, and I think our participants also learned a lot of that. Yes, it's not a new thing, maybe, but over here, it's our responsibility to share our experience, to share our knowledge to the community, because at the end of the day, we are part of the community. At the end of the day, we do have families that we need to protect. We have to protect our community, our society, and our businesses at the same time. Thank you very much. And I think, Lorraine, you do have a lot of things to say also about it.
I think you said it all. But then again, Mr. Dennis, Miss Kay, really a heartfelt gratitude for sharing your knowledge, for being with us today, not only to me and to Marwan, that was really vital information to the viewing public, expatriates in the UAE, back home in the Philippines, entrepreneurs. We are all learning that it all starts from us. As Mr. Dennis said, what you do with your time determines what you're going to do in the next day. And us being part of the community as individuals will what contribute to the entirety of an organization. And as an entrepreneur as well, in that perspective, I learned a lot, and it actually gives me a very good reality check. I'm definitely going to visit that Excel file of Miss K later on. And I really need to know realistically as well, where am I as an entrepreneur? Hopefully that too can be done by those who are watching with us today. And from Takhlees, Takhleespreneurs, citizens, residents of the UAE, expatriates, kabayans, everyone who stayed with us over the past hour, we do certainly hope that you learned something with us today as much as we did. Right, Marwan?
Of course, Lorraine. I'm actually excited about one thing over here. Clarence place that we do have a group photo.
Staging Clarence.
One second, guys. We are preparing.
Imagine, after all of this, it's about a group photo, Marwan, right?
No, I'm wondering how it's going to be, honestly.
No, honestly, I'm still really, in the zone. A lot of things that you learn as a person, a lot of things that you learn. Thank you for reminding me, Mr. Dennis, but because sometimes I also have that thing at the back of my mind, where do I get my confidence from? How am I really going to be able to make it personally and in the business as well? It's something that you just cannot shake off. But thank you for reminding me that innate in us, we can do it. Innate in us, it's built in. We are made for this, and we should never forget that.
I think now this is the perfect time for the action plan.
Yes, a strategic planning, as Ms. Kay said.
Accept what we are going through, and then to plan for the next. And personal note and an institutional note also.
I think having Mr. Dennis and Ms. Kay today have eased the burden on Marwan, trying to convince me that, yes, Lorraine, we can do this. Yes, Lorraine, we are moving forward. So I think more than helping me personally and as an entrepreneur, Dennis and Ms. Kay, you helped Marwan a lot in helping me convince myself in doing so.
Glad to be of help.
Indeed you were, guys, Mr. Dennis and Ms. Kay. Indeed you were.
And also, as Takhlees Business Services, we are here to help the entrepreneurs if they want to see the opportunities, if they want to do any kind of assessment to their businesses. We are here to help them, and this is our responsibility towards the society, because our vision from the beginning was actually to support the entrepreneurs and talents, to unleash the entrepreneur in them and to bring it out and to start their business and to start planning for their future. I think Lorraine, the next webinar is going to be when?
The next webinar will be on 29th. So we are just going to be waiting for what will be next for all of us, but also Takhlees Business Services has something in store for all aspiring entrepreneurs. We are going to make sure that yes, where you're not going to need to take money out of your pocket. We will be releasing it really soon. And as Marwan mentioned, we are here to unleash the entrepreneur in you, and we're going to guide you through the process without the need of cash coming out from your pocket. So stay tuned for that announcement. It's coming real soon, right before the end of this month.
We are really grateful for Mr. Dennis and Ms. Kay for their speech, for everything that actually they shared with us. And coming from the experience and the knowledge from you guys, it's really highly appreciated. And for sure, there's not going to be the last time that we are going to share the knowledge and the experience together. We are going to be here as a whole family, as a whole team, and to go through it, inshallah.
Most importantly, thank you so much, Clarence, and the whole team of Epic Productions and Fortune Accounting Services for putting this together and making sure that we are able to reach out to the community together as one family.
Thank you very much, guys. And
Photo op.
oh, how to take the photos? Okay, Clarence, how to take it? I don't know.
Okay, just smile. I'll take. I'll do it on the background. So
Is there any certain pose over there?
up to
Are we
you.
still live on this?
Yeah, it's live. Don't worry, guys. I will do this properly. Okay, 3, 2, 1. Thank you, guys. We got it.
You got it already?
Yeah.
Are you going to share it with us?
You want one more?
Maybe we need to change the pose. I don't know. I need to see it.
I'll be
I
smart.
didn't know Marwan is
Just do.
so conscious of his photo today.
No, I'm actually not conscious, but I want to see how the group photo works in Zoom.
Okay. 3, 2, 1.
Smile.
Yeah, got it again.
Okay, thank you very much, Clarence.
Mr. Dennis with Kay, thank you.
My pleasure.
Thank you so much again.
Have a great weekend.
Happy
You
weekend.
too.
Thank you to all
More
our
power.
participants. Next
Have a
time.
great and safe weekend, everyone.
And stay safe.
Dean
Yes,
Clarence,
stay safe.
Miss Lorraine, can I promote something?
Yes, sure. Mr. Dennis, go ahead.
Oh, before I forget, I would like to take this opportunity to promote my YouTube channel. It's Oragon channel. I would like to invite everyone to please subscribe my channel, Oragon channel. It discusses about life coaches. It features the outstanding global Filipinos across the globe. Oragon channel. Thank you.
Most welcome.
All right, guys. Thank you so much. See you again next time. Paano yung mga nakamit ako?